The US dollar is about to be replaced as a reserve currency and at the same time be taken out by digital currency. Or is it? Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, Joe Warper coming at you, and I have received so many requests to talk about what is going to happen to the US dollar between ideas that it's going to lose its reserve currency status and at the same time that the Fed is creating a digital dollar that will make all the money in your bank worthless. Well, I'm here to give you the straight facts about it and understand that I have no agenda in what I'm about to say. I'm not trying to sell you a product. I'm not asking you to invest in anything. I just want you to understand what actually is occurring and not let fear make decisions for you. Let's start with reserve currency status. Yes, currently, in the world, the US dollar is the reserve currency. That means that all foreign countries transact business typically in the US dollar because it's the most acceptable currency out there. And yes, BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and parts of Africa have decided that they no longer wish to trade in US currency and they'd like to get rid of the US dollar as currency. Unfortunately, that's not happening anytime soon. More than likely during my lifetime, not during your lifetime. Let's take a look at these countries. China created a bank with Russia in hopes that it could raise capital without any US dollars being injected into it. And it was doing well for a while. But as we know, if you've checked out my video about what's going on in the economy of China, China has a lot of economic problems, most of them around real estate, a lot of that around debt, and their bank is not doing well at all. Their real estate market is tanking. And don't forget, while China has over 1 billion citizens, most of those citizens are approaching retirement age. We're talking about a country that about 60% of its citizens are getting ready to retire, and that back in the 80s instituted a One-Child Act. That means that for every 2 adults, they were only allowed to have 1 kid. That means that when those 2 adults pass away, you've cut the population in half. That's how that works. That's why they're allowing 2 and 3 children, and it's so expensive to live in China. Nobody wants to do it. So China is not the future global superpower that you think it is. Russia's in deep trouble. The war in Ukraine is stretching on and on. It's costing them more money than they expected, and their economy is tanking because of it. Even Brazil is having economic difficulties. So how can the countries that are supposedly replacing the US currency going to do that if none of their economies are expanding in the way they thought they were going to expand? And I agree wholeheartedly that one day the US will no longer be the reserve currency. It happens. All of these things happen in cycles, but think about it. Who was the last country to hold reserve currency status? Great Britain. And what is one of the most powerful, most valuable currencies in circulation today? The British pound. So just because you're no longer the reserve currency doesn't mean that your currency devalues to zero. We're the reserve currency, and there are 3 great ways to know if we're heading into losing reserve currency status. And those areas are, is our exchange rate strong? Number 2, are people buying treasuries? And number 3, are people holding US dollars overseas? Well, as we can see here, yes, over the last few months, the value of the dollar in relation to other currencies has fallen, but it's still at nearly an all-time high and is doing very well. As for US treasuries, as treasury yields increase, the demand for those go up, and we can see that when Powell raised interest rates, he created a market for US treasuries that we haven't seen in nearly 30 years. And I will give it to you, yes, over the last decade, you can see that US dollars being held overseas has decreased from about 68% of all dollars held being in US currency to just above 60%, but that still means that over half of all the currency that's being held in the world is still being held in US dollars. So no one has a desire to devalue over 60% of the wealth that they hold because it's in US dollars. So again, the US dollar will go away one day, but not during my lifetime and not during yours. Well, what about the Fed and their plans for digital currency?
The Chinese last month unveiled the world's first digital currency from a major power, currency that would not be printed but would exist only in cyberspace on your phone, for example. Is the Fed working on a digital dollar?
We are actually evaluating that. Most major countries are now looking at the possibility of having a digital currency.
And their new Fed PaymentNow system that just went online July 20th. Well, these are two different areas that people are getting confused. They're talking about the new online Fed payment system being the same as digital currency, and CBDC's central bank digital currencies are different than the Fed PaymentNow system. Let's start with the Fed PaymentNow system. What this system will allow you, the consumer, to do is basically pay anybody, anywhere, instantly without a third-party bank being involved. If you want to pay somebody right now, you need to involve an intermediary. If you want to send money from one bank to another, there are steps that are involved to verify that that is going to take place properly. With the Fed PaymentNow system, it is going to make it easier for everybody out there to transact business. And it doesn't mean that the Fed is going to hold your hand, and it doesn't mean that they're going to restrict your ability to spend money. Now, CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, that does have me concerned, because as we can see in this chart, now there are about 11 countries who've already gone to a digital currency. There are 18 countries who are testing digital currencies. There are about 32 countries that are actively developing a digital currency, and there are 39 countries who are researching. So we're talking about 114 countries out there that are actively looking into digital currencies. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this isn't going to happen. More than likely, we will have a digital currency sometime in the future. But that does not mean that the value of the money you have in your bank account is going to zero. That does not mean that they're going to take every dollar that's out there in existence and make it disappear and replace it with something else and not allow you to make an exchange. That's not what that means at all. What it means is the US government is exploring digital currencies because they know if every other country in the world switches a digital currency, they too are going to have to switch to a digital currency. But they don't want to use Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a decentralized currency. That means it's not controlled by any one government. And the US is not going to institute or issue a denomination or a currency that they don't control. That just makes sense. Now, up to this point, the only way the Fed could control currencies was either through quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, where they actually create money or they destroy money. We saw the quantitative easing during COVID, and now we're seeing quantitative tightening as they're destroying or they're getting rid of all those bonds that they purchased. When they have their own currency, meaning they have their own central bank digital currency, they won't need to do quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. They'll simply be able to create or destroy wealth as they choose. Do I like this system? No, I don't. I don't like the idea of a digital currency. I don't like that the federal government will be able to see every single transaction that you make. Anytime you buy groceries at a store, anytime you order something online, anytime you want to give cash to somebody else, you will not be able to do that. And I don't think that that is a proper future that I want to be involved in, but I believe it will come someday. I believe we will have a central bank digital currency. Is it going to happen this month? Is it going to happen next month? No. We're looking at maybe by 2030 about $5 trillion of digital currency being created. But again, that doesn't mean that $5 trillion will cease to exist in the other currency and the people who had the money lose it. That's not how it happens. And if you're watching these videos where people are out there trying to scare you and tell you that this is what's going to happen, they're trying to sell you something. They aren't trying to help you. They want you to buy Bitcoin, or they want you to invest in gold, or they want you to invest in something that is going to create a commission for them and they're going to get paid. That's not what I'm about on this channel. I want you to understand that, number one, we're not losing our reserve currency status anytime soon. And number two, we're not switching over to a digital currency tomorrow. It will happen in the future, more than likely, but it's not happening anytime soon. So worry about the important things that are going on in your world. Worry about the debt that we're accumulating. Worry about the increased healthcare costs. Worry about the increased cost of homeownership and how the entire next generation may never have the ability to actually purchase a home because it's going to be too expensive. Those are things that you should be concerned about. But inside your portfolio, continue to diversify your assets. Don't just get rid of cash because somebody tells you that it's going to go away when the Fed declares that the US dollar is worthless. There's no benefit to the US government for you to not have any money. They want you to have money. They want you to be able to go out and transact in business because that is what allows our GDP to grow. It's what allows us to maintain our standard as the most powerful economic nation in the world, which we're losing to China. Now, I think that's going to reverse based on their One Child Act, but there's no benefit to the powers that be if you have no money. So make sure before you make any decisions, you fact check what you're looking at. Fact check this. Heck, go out there and look at from respectable financial professionals about reserve currency. And you know what? I'll link some of those videos down below. And you'll see that there are some people out there who are just spouting conspiracy theories, and there are those people out there who just want to get the correct information across to you, and that's what I'm trying to do in this video. Now, and if the CBDC becomes something we should be concerned about, make sure you check back here and I'll be one of the first people to turn on the alarms and let you know it's time to do something. If you like videos like this, check out some of my other videos, leave a comment down below, subscribe for future videos, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.